Good morning.
Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Happy
2025. We are in it
to win it.
Welcome back and happy Tuesday, turkeys. How long have we known each other?
We've known each other for 2 decades.
I am not apologizing for who I am or what I like or the people that I love.
How do I be a wife? How do I be a mom? And how do I be myself and all of that? You didn't see that coming, did you?
Oh, man. Well, we're back to our regularly scheduled programming of Jordan Peterson, Chapter 7.
Yep, Chapter 7. So, okay, I know you have a summary, which we all love. Will you give us just the title of the chapter, and then I want you to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. How much did you like this chapter?
Okay. Before we actually get into this chapter, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Okay, so New Year's just happened.
Yeah.
Is it New Year's Eve 2024 that we just had, or was it New Year's Eve 2025?
Well,
What's the correct way to describe it?
I would say New Year's Eve 2024, and then New Year's 2020. Now I see the conundrum.
Yeah, what's the correct word for it? Is it the year of that we are leaving that we describe the New Year's Eve?
No, because I think it's a celebration of the new year, so it's New Year, like NYE 2025. I think it's the next year.
It's the eve of 2025.
Yes, there we go.
Thank you. Because I really was baffled. What was I doing? Ugh, I hate the words that are about to come out of my mouth. I was putting hashtags on one of our videos that I was posting, trying to get it sucked up into the algorithm. And as I was writing it, I stopped and I was so perplexed about, is this New Year's Eve? Is this NYE 2024 or NYE 2025? I think we just solved it.
That makes sense. Yeah,
I feel like a real big dummy. Rule number 7. Back on track. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient.
Okay.
Do you know that I also took weeks to figure out how to pronounce expedient?
Really?
I kept pronouncing it expedient in my head.
I can see that for sure. Like expedite, expedient. It's like how I can't say certification.
It was incorrect. I think it's because I didn't pay attention to the I at the end. Anyway, okay. Well, I'm full honesty. I don't remember how I felt about this chapter as I was reading it because it was so long and so long ago. I really liked the title. I have some banger quotes that I really enjoyed. I sort of think the same message is being spoken in various forms, I suppose. Sort of like personal responsibility. There's probably some meandering. I mean, I know what's happening. He's trying to take context from other things. We're back to Adam and Eve. Nietzsche is back.
Cain and Abel. Yeah.
Cain and Abel. Yeah, we're going down some of the similar paths. I don't know how to rate anything.
Well, I thought maybe you would like this chapter because it kind of weaved in some of the Christian biblical stories and like brought not a different context to them, but like the way he explains it, we've talked about it, is kind of interesting to hear. So I thought you would maybe like that. I was quite lost in the beginning. Here's the thing. Again, I'm listening to this book. I'm listening to him himself read it. Okay. So that's a big factor in all this.
That's a layer.
That's a big layer. At first, it was like, I don't even know, like, if you told me the chapter was a completely different title, I would believe it. Like, I had no identity of where this was going. And then at the end, it all kind of started making sense. But I was and it's weird because I love nonfiction. I listen to nonfiction all the time. And I love very scientific, and I love learning. I love medical stuff, listening to it. But for some weird reason, the way he writes, it's hard for me to comprehend sometimes. All that to say, I liked it once I wrapped my head around the whole thing. It was just in some moments, I was thinking, what is happening?
I do have large buckets of time that I'm not underlining, which tells me that I was not lost, but just like chugging through.
Reading to read.
But I know what he's doing. He's laying down the foundation before he kind of brings it all home and like wraps it all together. It's just sometimes I can't follow the weave as far as he takes it. It's very academic and you can tell he's a professor.
That's the way to put it. Yep.
I always like the message. I do love when he brings in some of the biblical stuff because it is interesting to have a different perspective on it. But yeah, I remember this is the one I was referencing a couple chapters ago where I was like, there's a long one coming. It was this one.
Yep.
Because as I'm holding it in my hands, I mean, that's a chunk of paper.
Yeah, it was like an hour and 40-minute listen for one chapter. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember reading this one and I kept flipping and I'm like, where are, because I'll try to get to a heading where I stop and I don't, it may help too if I would like sit and read this all the way through, but I usually do little bits of reading in the morning. So there were a few times where it just felt a little disjointed, but we all came together and it's all good. Okay, let's do our summarization. Where is it? Here it is. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't feel like this is my best work of a summary because I wrote it again. I wrote it yesterday. Usually I try to write them when I finish the chapter and I didn't do that this time. So I may have missed some things. Everyone, it's fine. Rule 7. Pursue what is meaningful, not what is expedient. In this chapter, we are asked to examine the quality of our life through the lens of our values and what we pursue. Dr. Peterson acknowledges that the world is harsh, life is hard, and we don't always find our situation to be agreeable. We are again challenged to look inward at our own beliefs and values to examine what influence they have on our current trajectory. We read about delayed gratification, the joy and the challenge of a pursuit, and how do we even determine where we should go in the first place. Additionally, we are challenged to confront the definition of evil, its origin, and the role of suffering in the journey toward growth. Dr. Peterson also explores the idea of suffering itself through the lens of various philosophical viewpoints. Once these avenues and basic concepts have been dutifully picked apart, and just when your mind feels mushy from the big words and even bigger concepts, we are given a simple challenge and mandate to aim up to fix what is not serving us within our own lives and to tell the truth. Ultimately, we are challenged to cultivate a meaningful life through delayed gratification and hard work instead of mindlessly chasing the next trendy toy.
Yeah, those last two sentences. That's all I like. You really covered everything. But the last two sentences, if you asked me to summarize that, that's what I would have said.
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Yeah. Did you come up with aim big or did he say that?
I think he says it.
I was gonna say I really like that. I can't remember.
I don't either. We'll find out.
Or
We'll
aim
look stuff
high.
up.
What did you say? Aim high? Yeah.
Yeah, that I think that I did pull that from him.
Gotcha.
Okay. Well, do you have any quotes to start us off?
I have a few. I mean, again, it goes back to suffering and sacrifice are part of life. And a lot of it, again, goes back to personal responsibility. So I like it. It also reminds me of, when you talk to people who are going through like a weight loss journey or they want to get healthy, it's like short-term satisfaction does not override or overrule long-term goals or success. Like, don't eat the cake now because you want cake. Go take a walk and you won't be happy now, but you'll be happy later. That kind of what it reminded me of. Let me pull my quoties up. I'm sure you have a lot, but I just like, okay, this one. If you bend everything, your faith, your words, your actions, to fit the expedient moment, you will warp yourself, which is super interesting because it's like if you keep caving, if you keep giving in over and over again with your actions and your words and your thoughts, it's not just that moment. It actually is going to dictate like everything for your life, which is interesting.
I do like that one. You contort yourself to match other people's things or to fit into a box and then you lost your actual shape. Here we go. To share does not mean to give away something you value and get nothing back. That is instead only what every child who refuses to share fears it means. To share means, properly, to initiate the process of trade. A child who can't share, who can't trade, can't have any friends because having friends is a form of trade. I just thought that was interesting because it speaks to, I don't really know what it had to do with the larger chapter, but it speaks to the idea of, to me, I hear this as having friendships that are a give and take and relationships that are a give and take. And that sharing in that moment might be a sacrifice in the moment. But if you're living in if that relationship is balanced, it's coming back to you later. So if it's always just you giving and giving and giving and nothing's coming back, yeah, that's probably not ideal. I don't even think that's necessarily what he was saying, but that's what I took away from it because I think that can be a real challenge for some of us with energy vampires in our lives.
Well, no, I think you hit it on the head because in the beginning, he was talking about predators or animals just being out. And he's like, I could eat this whole carcass or mammal that I killed now, but maybe I can't eat it all. So I either waste it or I give it to like quote unquote an enemy or someone else, like another wolf or whatever. Not wolves because they hunt together. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, then maybe they'll reciprocate that to me later. And then I'll have food for now and later. I thought that was an interesting way to look at it. Instead of trying to be selfish and you end up wasting stuff, you give some up to create a lasting relationship, potentially.
It reminds me of Brene Brown when she did all of her work talking about scarcity and just a scarcity mindset. You know, when you're doing that and you're just hoarding everything because you don't trust the next moment versus just taking what you need and then passing along what's next, and then in hopes that it comes back around if you're ever unable to provide or do something. I don't know. I'm just going to read through these because there's no reason for me to give an explanation. Some things do not go well. That seems to have much to do with the terrible nature of the world, with its plagues and famines and tyrannies and betrayals. But here's the rub. Sometimes when things are not going well, it's not the world that's the cause. The cause is instead that which is currently most valued, subjectively and personally. Why? Because the world is revealed to an indeterminate degree through the template of your values. Much more on this in Rule 10.
Ooh, teaser.
This is the part that I really liked. If the world you are seeing is not the world you want, therefore, it's time to examine your values. It's time to rid yourself of your current presuppositions. It's time to let go. It might even be time to sacrifice what you love best so that you can become who you might become instead of staying who you are.
Yes, I did like that part. And did he touch on this in a different chapter? But I really like it. Just reminds me of bad habits. You know, should I eat dessert every night? No. Do I like to? I'm just speaking hypothetically because luckily, well, it was Christmas
We just love
season,
the season of treats.
But it's like, do I get in the habit and do you want to have that habit? And yes, it's again short-term satisfaction, but would I be better off not eating dessert every night? Yes. Is it a harder choice in the moment? Yes. Will I feel better in a week? 100. I just feel like it goes back to habits and trying to let go. We talked about this too, like don't add things to your to-do list. Take something off, you know?
Yeah.
Like that. I have one real quick.
Go.
So sorry. I like this one because, well, he talks, it's his main, I feel like this is his main thing in this book. Sometimes doing what's meaningful requires a willingness to confront suffering voluntarily. That's basically all it is. It's like, life's hard. You're going to suffer. We gotta just go get through it.
Yeah, what are you gonna do about it?
Yeah.
Okay, here we get back on his, he really hits home the whole don't lie. Okay. If you cease to utter falsehoods and live according to the dictates of your conscience, you can maintain your nobility, even when facing the ultimate threat. If you abide truthfully and courageously by the highest of ideals, you will be provided with more security and strength than will be offered by any short-sighted concentration on your own safety. If you live properly, fully, you can discover a meaning so profound that it protects you even from the fear of death. I think this is referencing Socrates. This is when he's kind of talking through some of the different philosophical points of view. But I enjoy him kind of saying that it got to your quote that you talked about before, but if you go against your own moral compass and your own consciousness and what you believe to be correct, to kind of worm out of a current situation, you're doing yourself the disservice of working through whatever that hard thing is. And that whole the easiest solution, I don't know. There are times where the simplest solution is correct, but there's also times where the easiest one is maybe the cop-out. So I think he's kind of just saying, stick to your guns and don't weenie out.
Which brings me perfectly to my next quote, which is, you can't fool nature. You can't fool your destiny. Basically, avoiding your responsibility and taking shortcuts will lead to other consequences or won't get you to where you were supposed to be. Yeah, if there's a simpler way, work smarter, not harder sometimes. But also, if you're copping out and not addressing something that you know you should, it's going to come back and bite you in the butt because life is life. And I do believe in destiny a little bit. So it's you can't run from it forever. You're going to have to address it now or later, and later is probably going to be harder.
Yeah, for sure. I loved this quote. He is talking about, this is a quote from Carl Jung, which if you're in the mental health field is sort of one of the building block people, came after Freud. Okay. So I'm quoting Jordan Peterson, quoting Carl Jung, and said, "No tree can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell." Right?
That's good. Interesting.
And then he kind of goes on to say, there was no possibility for movement upward in that great psychiatrist's deeply considered opinion without a corresponding move down. It is for this reason that enlightenment is so rare. Who is willing to do that? Do you really want to meet who's in charge at the very bottom of the most wicked thoughts? I was like, yeah, that's kind of true. It's that whole idea of having to go into the darkest parts of yourself and acknowledge that they're there, and some of the horrid impulses that all of us humans have and the things we're capable of, before you can really transcend that and be better.
which is terrifying. I know he went on a tangent about like soldiers coming back with PTSD, but for reasons that you wouldn't think of. And then it's just like humanity and the evil that's here is worse than like a natural disaster, which is true. It's like you can't change that. It's Mother Nature or whatever the circumstance is, but someone decided to go out and do this heinous thing. God, it just makes it 1,000 times worse to wrap your head around stuff. But then like a certain aspect of that lives in all of us.
Exactly. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that, are you really going to ever fully reach your full potential? I read, what was it called? My Time in the Jungle. I think that was the name of the book. It was written by one of the magistrate judges where I used to work, but he was a Marine Vietnam veteran. Anyway, he had touched on that with some of his stories. Like some of the worst things that happened were things that he didn't realize he was capable of doing. And just how when you're in these like dark moments, there's just this darkness that resides in you that you maybe didn't know was there.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Very nice.
Very lighthearted. Very good.
Yeah, very cool. I don't know. He kind of talks about his own journey, which I felt akin to just of you come of a certain age, you start to see what's going on in the world, and then you start looking at all these different answers to it. Kind of the big questions of life and what's the meaning of life? How do we grapple with all of these opposing points of view? I'm not going to read the whole long thing. I remember that part really sticking out to me, that because he says it specifically in one part where he said that he had outgrown the shallow Christianity of his youth and then had moved through all these different philosophies. And you can tell then he like swings to the dark side and with all of the Nietzsche stuff and sort of oscillates back and forth between all these different points of view and then sort of comes to this ending conclusion that seems to pull a little bit from everything. And I think it's why he references Christianity so much, because that was his original framework. So it's just easy to pull from that and sort of fit things back in a different way. Well, again, but that's what I really started to enjoy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, again, I feel like it goes back to the order and chaos and the light and dark and just there's this dichotomy in everything in life.
Yeah. And it doesn't make sense. And then it's sort of being okay with it, with the nonsensical nature of it all. I liked this part too. He said, so what can I not doubt? The reality of suffering. It brooks no argument. Nihilists cannot undermine it with skepticism. Totalitarians cannot banish it. Cynics cannot escape from its reality. Suffering is real, and the artful infliction of suffering on another for its own sake is wrong. That becomes the cornerstone of my belief. So I liked that. You can see what he's doing, where he's stripping away everything. He had this framework. He pulled all of that back. He looked at everything and then said, okay, what's the foundation? And he basically comes to that inflicting suffering on somebody else for the sake of making them suffer is wrong. What a great place to start.
Yes.
We can argue about what day Jesus was born on and, just all of the little nitpicky things, even just within Christianity, all of the different little theological arguments that people have and whatever, camp they sit in on Sunday. But at the end of the day, if we can all kind of have a few cornerstone touch points, I don't know. I think that's more helpful.
Yeah. No, it's true.
The other thing I liked, which I'm not going to read all of these really long ass things, but I really enjoyed him kind of saying there's give and take and there's some gray area in the middle, but there are boundaries on right and wrong. And in this era, it feels very fluid. Everything does in society in a lot of ways, which I think is helpful for an expansion of very traditional, I don't even want to say conservatism, but just very traditional values. We've expanded beyond that a little bit, but I think we're kind of coming back around to this point where, okay, there are limits on that. There need to be some bumpers on the lane. And I think that's what he's kind of trying to hammer down is what are these very basic lines in the sand that we can all agree on needing to be drawn between right and wrong.
Yes, I love that. Especially, in the world today. It's a great way to put it.
This one's going to be a little bit long, but this I feel like was sort of his whole summary of all of this. Like this is right at the end. So Perfect. This is where he sort of pulls it all together.
Because I literally just pulled those sentences out, but I want you to read it. And because I was going to ask you to read it anyway, one caveat or one little note, because I'm listening to it, the whole last 5 minutes, I'm listening to it. I'm walking around the house at this point, trying to finish the chapter. And I'm like, he sounds different. And then I start paying attention and he is literally on the verge of tears. I can hear it in his voice. So it's like super interesting. I could feel the emotion of these last few paragraphs or whatever you're about to read. And it
Yeah.
was really, really interesting. So I wanted you to read it, but just, and then know now when I was listening to it, he was literally like, I felt like he was about to start crying.
Yeah.
So it was just like
His
super
cracky
meaningful.
voice went super cracky.
Super. So yeah, just keep that in mind when you're reading it. Okay.
That makes sense. It does sort of feel like everything's coming to a crescendo at this end part. Okay, so he says, aim up, pay attention, fix what you can fix. Don't be arrogant in your knowledge. Strive for humility because totalitarian pride manifests itself in intolerance, oppression, torture, and death. Become aware of your own insufficiency, your cowardice, malevolence, resentment, and hatred. Consider the murderousness of your own spirit before you dare accuse others and before you attempt to repair the fabric of the world. Maybe it's not the world's fault. Maybe it's you. You failed to make the mark. You've missed the target. You've fallen short of the glory of God. You've sinned. And all of that is your contribution to the insufficiency and evil of the world. And above all, don't lie. Don't lie about anything ever. Lying leads to hell. It was the great and small lies of the Nazi and communist states that produced the death of millions of people. One more paragraph, bear with me. Consider then that the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering is a good. Make that an axiom. To the best of my ability, I will act in a manner that leads to the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering. You have now placed to the pinnacle of your moral hierarchy a set of presuppositions and actions aimed at the betterment of being. Why? Because we know the alternative. The alternative was the 20th century. The alternative was so close to hell that the difference is not worth discussing. And the opposite of hell is heaven. To place the alleviation of unnecessary pain and suffering at the pinnacle of your hierarchy of value is to work to bring about the kingdom of God on earth. That's a state and a state of mind at the same time.
Like it. Was there anything else after that?
There's a little bit. Let me see.
The one, oh, I was just gonna say the one sentence that really stood out to me where he got super, super emotional, I think was the last one. He said, meaning, he was talking about meaning and like the power of a meaningful life. And I think that's where he started getting emotional. He goes,
Okay.
meaning is what manifests when the many levels of being arrange themselves into perfectly functioning harmony, which I thought was really cool. It's like, you can suffer, but if you're doing what's meaningful, like that is how you live in harmony with yourself. And then he goes into meaning is when everything there is comes together in an ecstatic dance of single purpose, the glorification of a reality so that no matter how good it has suddenly become, it can get better and better and better. He legit, it was actually quite moving when I listened to it because, you know, when you listen to someone talk, it's more so than just reading words on a paper. Crazy. I like that part though.
I do too. You make such a good point. Here's it's not one he does. I mean, he references Germany obviously, and the leader of that party, whose name I'm afraid to say to get canceled on YouTube. But he made terrible decisions and led people in the wrong direction. But nothing would have happened if it hadn't been thousands of other people making little decisions along the way. I mean, that's how it became the movement and the significant thing that it was. It wasn't just there can be one shitbag, but everybody else making these small concessions along the way and contributing to that suffering is ultimately why it was such a catastrophic event.
Yep. Crazy.
I have one other thing just because I enjoyed it, and this is where he kind of ties back in the expedient part. But he says, expedience is the following a blind impulse. It's a short-term gain. It's narrow and selfish. It lies to get its way. It takes nothing into account. It's immature and irresponsible. Meaning is its mature replacement. Meaning emerges when impulses are regulated, organized, and unified. Meaning emerges from the interplay between the possibilities of the world and the value structure operating within the world. If the value structure is aimed at the betterment of being, the meaning revealed will be life-sustaining. It will provide the antidote for chaos and suffering. It will make everything matter, and it will make everything better.
That was still a lot, and I already read the chapter, and rereading it was just like, oh my god.
Right? And then I think the last thing I underlined, which I think was part of what you read, was just him saying to have meaning in your life is better than to have what you want, because you may neither know what you want nor what you truly need.
I like that.
Which reminds me of yoga, where at the end they do the mantra of may all beings everywhere be happy and free, and may my life contribute to that happiness and that freedom.
Oh, I like that.
I was like, see all this shit. It just, I don't have all of the smartness to articulate enough things about religion and spiritual lives, but I feel like I've had enough exposure and to see the common threads through the philosophies that I have intermingled with, to see that there's this common thread that we can't deny of certain truths, which is why I just don't, the whole like true hardcore atheist thing doesn't make sense to me. Like there's something. There's something somewhere, because all of these different religions and philosophical points of view keep coming back and touching on the same vein.
Yes. Yeah, it's so interesting. Ugh.
All right, well, it was meaty, but it was good.
It was good. It was good. Once you get through it and digest it, it's good takeaways. Great takeaways, actually.
Let me read our preview. Oh, God, I can't pick up my book. Let me read our preview for next week, which is going to be chapter 8. Tell the truth, or at least don't lie.
Well, he definitely dropped some hints on that. That's going to be a good one. I'm excited.
Last but not least, my tip of the week is to go get yourself a Dixon flannel.
What is that?
Dixon, favorite thing. They all have themes. This one is Mama Tried, the Milwaukee Motorcycle Show.
Oh, that's cute.
Low-key Packer colors. All my little buttons say Mama Tried. Favorite thing. This is a cleaner, like a sunglass lens cleaner.
Oh my God, that's
stitched
perfect.
into the bottom corner. And then it also has the theme. Where is it?
I love that. That's cooler than my flannel.
It's so fun. They are limited releases, so they'll release ones. There'll be different themes, anything you can imagine, like Chucky. I can't think of other ones.
Chucky, like the doll?
Different companies. West Coast Customs just had one. I don't know. Anything you can imagine, but they have men's and women's. They're comfortable. They ship everywhere. Go get one. Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.
Ba-bing.
Ba-boom.